It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders on an afternoon drive because, folks, the rookies are in town. Rookie minicamp starting up for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Alan, how are we doing?
I'm doing good. There's somebody doing some sketchy driving over here on the south side that I'm attempting to avoid, but other than that, we're in very good shape.
Is it Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick in the same vehicle?
And Troy Fautanu, no. But I kind of want so I guess if you didn't read it, SteelersNow.com today, that Mason McCormick, Troy Fautanu, and Zach Frazier are all rooming together. And because Frazier lives close by, he's the only one that has his vehicle. So the three of them all rode together in Frazier's truck. I just want the visual.
I love it.
Of the suspension on that truck after the three of those guys get out of it, right? Because that's 930
hydraulics,
30 pounds of dude. Like, what is the this has to be like at least an F-250, right? Like, that ain't no Ranger getting those three guys into practice, right? I mean, this has got to be a pretty significant vehicle. I think we need to do I need a full Steelers Afternoon Drive report with Zach Frazier about his truck and its ability as a practice wagon for three offensive linemen, because that is impressive. You're not getting three offensive linemen in here, let me tell you that.
No, there was a lot. Actually, for like a rookie camp, like a day one of a rookie camp, there were some compelling things that I feel like came out of today. This is the most compelling
for us, for like people that are ridiculous like you and I. To me, that is the most compelling thing that happened today. It was actually a very newsy first day of rookie minicamp. Usually, this is something that gets hyped up a lot more than it actually matters. But I think a lot of actually important things, besides Zach Frazier qualifying for the carpool lane with half of an offensive line, there were actual news things that happened today too.
Wait, do we know though, before we move off of this, which one is shotgun and which one's in the back?
I gotta assume the first round pick gets shotgun, right? I mean, doesn't that have to, like,
he doesn't even call shotgun. He just says first round pick instead of shotgun.
I mean, I would think, right? I would think that's the way it works. I don't know. More investigation needs done into this phenomenon. Sure. Absolutely. And I will get to the bottom of it for you.
Well,
the audience.
Yeah. Well, yeah, mainly me, and also the audience. 1/3 of the players that we're talking about here, Troy Fautanu, is a big part of why I said that I think this is compelling, is because everybody wants to know what side he is going to play on. Played obviously left tackle at Washington, but with Michael Penix being a left-handed quarterback, that wasn't the blind side. He was playing, what most people's right tackles look like in the NFL. And he lined up today starting at right tackle. Now, I do want to preface by saying, because I know some people might just take that and run with it, never moving from right tackle. That's where he's going to be for the rest of his career now. But day one, rookie minicamp, was on the right side.
Yeah, I mean, I think Troy Fautanu has the ability to play all five offensive line positions, but I think right tackle is the right position for him right now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It seems to make a lot of sense. I've been sort of, every time somebody's asked me since the draft, where are they going to play? This is the only thing that makes sense to me, is play Fautanu at right tackle and put Broderick Jones at left tackle, where he can compete with Dan Moore, and Dan Moore can be the swing backup, because if, obviously he hasn't been able to play right tackle, but Broderick Jones could go back to the other side if there was an injury to Fautanu. I think that makes all the sense in the world. So I'm not surprised by it at all. I think he will stay there this year. Like, I think that's the plan. I understand that it's day one of rookie minicamp, and they could have played him at punter if they wanted to, and it really wouldn't matter in the long run. So, you're right. I don't think it necessarily matters, but I feel like this is just where he's going to be. I think Troy Fautanu is going to be a right tackle.
And he had to start somewhere. So for him to start on the right side is obviously going to spark a little bit of conversation, because we were curious as to where that would be. But I want to ask you why you say about, this is where you think he would be best suited to play. Because in my mind, Like I know that obviously not the biggest tackle in the world, 6'3", and the arms were long enough, everything was good enough measurements to play tackle in the NFL, but really like the pass pro, his pass sets are cleaner than Broderick's were. Like I just feel like he's more advanced in that way. And Broderick is I don't know if he's the better of the two run blocking necessarily, but certainly that's Broderick's strength as opposed to his pass pro. Which normally lines up with playing right tackle in the NFL. So why do you feel like it is Broderick left and Troy Fautanu right?
I think for me, the big thing is we know that Dan Moore is not going to play the right side. And I think Troy Fautanu is more ready to play right now. So I want to put him in the place where there's nothing in his way. Like if you have to give one, if you flip it, okay, like there's no competition between Fautanu and Dan Moore at left tackle. Like, and I think Broderick Jones has a higher ceiling than Troy Fautanu does, but he has played so much less football. And I think there's, he's still younger than Troy Fautanu. And I think there's, like, I would rather, I think Broderick Jones moving to left tackle is something we want to do eventually. Like, do it now while you have Dan Moore there. Like, because that process might not be smooth and you give yourself some backup. And I think Fautanu's just going to play wherever you put him. And so, to me, this just makes sense. I think Broderick Jones' skill set would be fine on the right side if, the Steelers had like a left tackle, sort of signed, sealed, and delivered. I just think for the Steelers, this makes the most sense. And I think Fautanu is like a slightly shorter tackle, like, probably fit right tackle just fine. It's not like it's a big difference. And Mike Tomlin kind of wrote it off at the draft. It's like, you're talking about an eighth of an inch, and it's true. I mean, it's not a big difference, but it is a difference. And I think, I've thought since they drafted him, that's the way it was going to go. They really, really want Broderick Jones to be a left tackle. We'll see if he becomes a good enough pass protector to stay there. You can always go back, but I think this is going to be the plan for this year, where Troy Fautanu is going to play right tackle, Broderick Jones is going to play left tackle, and I think if there's a part of that I'm more worried about than the others, it's Broderick Jones, not Troy Fautanu.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Again, looking at like the skill sets and how they project to be as players, or at least in my mind, with one being the better pass protector and the other one's upside being more about what he is in the run game. I would have thought the opposite, but what you're saying with Dan Moore's inclusion certainly makes sense. So we'll see how it plays out. But again, this is just day one. Talking about size, though, it also brings up the other guy that we were having in that conversation with Zach Frazier, who he's bringing to work with him, Mason McCormick, who strictly in games has played left guard. But, they need to tap into that versatility, obviously, if they want him to be the swing interior offensive lineman. Talked about even, calling protections from the left guard spot. But, whether it is right now or in the future, like he's got to be able to play multiple spots on the interior there. What were your takeaways from what they were doing with him here on day one?
Yeah, playing him at right guard, and I think that one's sort of obvious, like, just go do the thing you haven't done yet. I expect that we'll see him in a lot of right guard and a lot of center this offseason, and probably not a lot of left guard, not because he can't do it, but because he has done that. And if someday the idea is to make him the swing back up on the inside, they will want him to get experience at those three positions, and he only has experience at one. So, go work the other two. I would envision is the game plan for Mason McCormick this season. Very smart kid. I remember talking to him at the combine, and I was really impressed by just his knowledge of the game. Like you said, was calling protections from guard, so he'll have no problem doing that at center. The transition to center will be about snapping, which he hasn't done. But both Fautanu and McCormick have done this in practice, where they've practiced in the other spots. They just haven't played in the other spots, and so not really surprised that they're together on the right side. Also, it just makes sense, if you're running this mini camp and these OTAs, which are coming after these mini camps, you've got guys like Joey Fisher and Kellen Deesh who were on the practice squad last year. They know each other. Put them together on one side, put your draft picks together on the other side. It kind of makes everybody happy, and I think that makes some sense too.
I was going to ask if you thought that it played into it, or again, we're talking day one of rookie camp here, but like, I know that he's got to get acclimated with multiple spots anyway. But I've had the thought as well, like, could they get something done with James Daniels? Sure, but out of the entire offensive line, he's the one that's hitting unrestricted free agency or slated to the earliest. So is part of that going to be that as well? Like, they need somebody to play right guard in the event that James Daniels isn't part of the long-term future.
I mean, I think if they're thinking about rapidly accelerating Mason McCormick's development and getting him on the field as fast as possible, replacing James Daniels in 2025 is like at the knife edge of that curve, right? Like that's doing it as good as you can do it. Does that mean it's going to happen? No, but it would be nice, right? And so why not? Like, yeah, why not start him there? And the with Saunders being the one part of that I do wonder how things are going to play out as we go forward is that during the season, Isaac Saunders didn't practice all that much. So I wonder if we're going to see a lot of Mason McCormick at right guard and at center in OTAs and in training camp. And then we get to the season, we might see a lot more Mason McCormick at left guard at practice because Isaac Saunders is getting the day off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point too. The other one that I for sure want to touch on, I mean, you can feel free to bring up any takeaways that you had as well, but I can't get through this without talking about my guy Payton Wilson, who I know, again, I feel like every time that we bring up a subject, we got to preface by saying first day of rookie minicamp here, but I just love the fact that he was wearing the green dot already, like comes in immediately, and by all accounts from you guys, just took on a leadership role on day one, and I love to see it.
I don't ever recall hearing a Steelers defense as like loudly communicating as they were. He like took it to 11, and I like appreciate the heck out of it. No actual green dot because there's no helmets, but getting the call from the sideline and then coming over, giving it to and there are more experienced guys like Tyler Murray was on this team last year. There's I'm trying to. I think there was an outside linebacker there that was as well. Oh, David Perales was there last year. So there are guys with like far greater knowledge of the playbook around. And the fact that they chose Payton Wilson to do that, I think, says a lot about his demeanor, about his personality, where he's like, yes, let's go, follow me. He is an older draft pick. He was like 6 years in college, but it really shows, I think, in that kind of environment where like some guys, when they just get to the NFL, are just trying to get their stuff together. In fact, Zach Frazier actually said that. Like, I'm just trying to get my ducks in a row before I try to be a leader. And I think Payton Wilson is kind of already beyond that. I think he is ready to hit the ground running, and not just as a linebacker, but being a leader. And because of his experience and his age and just his personality, he's a very mature young man and very well grounded. And I think he's someone that is really going to be, I tweet about him doing all this, and then people in the comments on Twitter are all like, "Yeah, I'm betting on him to be defensive rookie of the year." Like, he may not play 20% of the team snaps. Like that. He's fourth on the depth chart right now, pending Cole Holcomb's health. It's hard to see him getting much higher than third without somebody else getting hurt. And no matter what happens, he ain't getting to be on second with Patrick Queen in the building. So, like, yeah, I mean, sure, he's like, I think it's interesting because he's this guy. Like, he plays so hard, and if he stays healthy, I see Payton Wilson is the guy that the fans are going to be like, why are they playing Payton Wilson this year? Like, I see it. I see it happening already.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I don't need to explain to you how big of a fan I am of him, but yeah, he's a 30-year-old, 24-year-old, basically, is the way that I look at him.
Yes, 100%.
And I wonder how much of that comes from, I know it's not like from a football perspective, but his brother being an MLB pitcher who spent time with the Pirates, like just knowing what it's like to be a pro in some capacity.
Sure. That's what their obsession with NFL bloodlines is all about. It's not about the DNA. It's about the experience and understanding the work that needs to be put into it to be a successful professional athlete. And so, yeah, I think that's part of it. I really loved what he had to say about his injuries too. You know, I included in the story. You check it out, Steelersnow.com. I think it's a pretty good one. A conversation that he and I had from from the Senior Bowl about his injury history, and he said, you know, like, look, shoulder thing, and we can talk about that at some point, but that was an accident, right? It wasn't like it was an injury. But you know, he said like his knees, like, I went from high school wrestling and just doing whatever and cutting weight to playing college football, and like my body wasn't ready to do it, and that's why I got hurt. Like I didn't understand like what size I needed to be, what I needed to eat, how I needed to train to keep myself healthy for 12 football games. And it took me time to figure it out. And like that's like why. But in that interview, he said something that I think is like just straight to the core of how much of a sicko for football this man is. They're like, in that he's like, yeah, I like to be between 233 and 236 pounds. I think that's a good range for me, you know. And I'm like, you're in like if you're so in tune with what you're eating and what you're doing to your body that you are aware that you have an optimal 3-pound range. Like, you know, you read his quote and you can say like, oh, he says he's not gonna have any problems with injuries anymore. Yeah, that's what everybody who's had injuries says, right up until they have more injuries. I don't know. I think it hits a little bit differently when you talk about like him saying things like, yeah, I was a dumb kid that didn't understand what it took to prepare my body. And now I understand my optimal 3-pound body weight rate, you know, range. He's come a long way.
Yeah, it certainly seems very in tune with everything, like mind, body, every part of his regiment here. So I'm obviously he's a Steeler, so I'm rooting for him, but like to a deeper level, I'm a huge fan of Payton Wilson's. Alan, what other takeaways did you have from today? I know you and Nick collaborated on a story, so there's more stuff than the 3 that I've brought up, but you know, what else stood out to you?
Roman Wilson, you know, continues to look the part. I think is going to play a lot, and you know, can't talk about like the formations and stuff, but I think he is going to be used as I've said he's going to be used. Where you're talking about a slot guy, maybe with like some condensed sets or some bunches or something like that. But you know, if they're looking, you know, this is not the answer for outside receiver, as we've been saying. That there's somebody else who's going to have that job, and it's not going to be him. But man, he looked good. I was really impressed with him. Honestly, I think, you know, like, look, no pads, no hitting. It's really hard to take away something from how an offensive lineman looks. I really thought Roman Wilson was probably the most impressive player to me, just in terms of the way he was moving around the field.
Yeah, I would say, like, you know, you can look at what his 40 was and be like, okay, this guy's fast, right? Like, but that's more like the long speed. Like watching the few clips that I was able to see of him today, watching the short area quickness, like in the way that that's going to translate. Yeah, I'm excited for once, you know, we do see them get into a different setting where it is like real football.
Yeah, and like the real football's far away, but I think the explosiveness really jumps out at you. And you know, I saw him at the Senior Bowl, but of course, Senior Bowl we sit in the stands, right? So now I'm on the sideline, you know, 4 yards away, and it's pretty impressive. Like this guy has elite physical tools, in addition to his borderline insane mindset, which is what makes great football players. Like I'm not saying that he is for sure going to be that, but he's got all the ingredients.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the more intriguing guys there to me that I want to learn more about and just watch how this entire process is going to play out for is Beanie Bishop, though. So what did you see from him today?
I love Beanie Bishop's attitude about life and football. You know, he is that classic, like, he is a small man, and he is like, he's like, great. I'm a have small man syndrome about everything. Like, and he just runs with it. Like they did him dirty though. I gotta say, no, not him, but like Marquez Williams from Pitt. So they listed Beanie Bishop at an extraordinarily generous 5'10" on the roster.
Oh, wow.
And Marquez Williams at Pitt, who's there on a tryout, only listed at 5'8". I've stood next to the two of them. They are exactly the same height. Okay, so if they're lying about somebody's, it's not low, right? So they did Quez a little dirty. But they're already building up Beanie Bishop figuratively, if not
Yeah.
literally here. He is not 5'10".
He's gonna be 6 foot by training camp.
And when they got out there in the little groups, he was standing with the safeties. And I'm like, that's I mean, he did play some safety in college. I'm like, that's interesting. But they were, getting ready to play base defense. So he didn't even get out there until, nickel. And then it's like, oh, there's Beanie Bishop, and he said they actually talked to him about playing in the nickel back before the draft. They're like, yeah, we'd like you to come be our slot corner. Wow. I think that's pretty good indication of what they have planned for the young man. And I don't know if they're okay with him being the only option there, but like I'm gonna be pretty surprised if Beanie Bishop doesn't make the team.
Oh, yeah. I fully agree in terms of at least making the roster, but that is very interesting that they told him that, like, I mean, he could have been picked by anybody in like the 6th or 7th round, and I really wouldn't have questioned it. But like, as long as he went undrafted, I felt like there was a good chance that this is where he would land.
Yeah, I agree. And it was those three guys, right? It was like MJ Devonshire and Daquan Hardy and Beanie. It was like one of those guys is a Steeler, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything else that kind of stood out to you?
Ryan Shazier was there, and they of working and not just there. I don't know if that's like what they call it, an internship or whatever, but he was working with Eddie Faulkner, putting the running backs through the drills. Thought that was interesting. Ryan Watt's not there today. He is graduating from the University of Texas. Was told they expected him in later today, so see if he's there tomorrow, and we'll see what position he plays. He's another one of those guys that maybe could have landed at more than one spot, and we'll see how they want to use him. You got the roster in front of you?
I don't, but
I'm blanking on his first name. The corner from Grambling, Alexander, I believe is his last name. It's wearing number a single digit, 9 maybe.
Grambling. Is this longer than I'm looking at your post here with the? Why can't I find it?
It's in the corners.
Oh, Cedric Anderson.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
If you want a Joey Porter Jr. Corey Trice clone physically, that's what you got right there. I mean, that is another, like, I understand the Beanie and Quez are small corners. He just towered over every other DB. It looked like there was like one senior on the 8th grade team.
He was listed as 6'4", 195 last year at Grambling. So
yeah, he is a large man. So that stood out. And James Hudson, I believe is his name. Or was it Jim Hudson? I don't remember. The defensive tackle from Fresno. Johnny Hudson. Sorry.
Yeah.
That is a nose tackle. That's a girthy boy. There's some width to that man. So they came out in base defense, and that is a big boy. I only listed like 303 or something, but he's not that tall, and he is large. So it's always interesting.
Yeah, I was going to ask about.
Take much away from the football, but like you can take a lot from looking at the person up close, and it looks a little different than he did on tape. I got to say.
I think it's intriguing. Anthony Averett, who was had a little bit of a run with the Ravens, is with them in rookie mini camp, and I'm curious to see what that's going to look like. I obviously remember the little bit of a run that he had with the Ravens. I'm just kind of intrigued because it's not like the Steelers are like super deep at corner. Like, I'm not saying that I would predict that he's going to somehow make this roster, but I just think it's interesting that he's somebody that's around right now.
I think it's interesting. He's a guy that needed to get a tryout. Like, I think he's worth a 90-man roster spot. It would not surprise me if he plays well, if he gets it. So I think he'll be around. A couple of the other guys that stood out to me just for one reason or another. I wasn't sure what Phil Dracovic tight end was going to look like. I wouldn't say he was the most athletic quarterback in the world. Kind of looked all right though. Like obviously not doing any blocking, but I mean, ran better than I thought. I don't know. It looked less ridiculous than I thought it was going to look.
The ridiculous part was wearing 49.
Well, I mean, you don't get to pick the bad number that you
I'm just saying.
It isn't like, look, if you're going to be a number 6 tight end, you get number 49. Like that's the deal. John Rice Plumlee might be the smallest quarterback in the NFL.
Really? Okay. I actually didn't know how big he was.
Less big than anyone. And not just short, but skinny. Man, like I know people have talked about using his athleticism and like maybe he's a wide receiver. Like I don't know. I'd be afraid of getting him broken. Like he's not a big man. Moves well. I'm not actually throwing, so like it's not. Can't offer any evaluation of his quarterback ability, but surprisingly small.
He's listed as 6 foot 200. Do you think that they're giving him some there?
2 inches and 20 pounds. that's what I'm gonna go with. About 5'10", buck 80, maybe. Very, very small. And who else? I'm trying to think of who else was noteworthy there. And that's pretty much the list. The Duquesne wide receiver is another big guy too. Usually, the FCS schools, you're expecting an undersized guy, and he's wearing 21. And Hakeem Butler wore 21 last year, and I was like, yeah, it kind of fits. Like he's not quite as big as Hakeem Butler, but he's a bigger body dude. Usually, you're not getting
Daryl
that
Powell,
when you're,
right?
Yeah, when you're digging into the FCS level, and let's be honest, Duquesne's, mid to low tier, even at the FCS level. He's a big guy. Like he doesn't look like some Gabe Dow, who played quarterback at Dayton and is his wide receiver. He's a little guy. He looks like an FCS wide receiver. That's a big boy, and so I think someone to be on the lookout for because they don't have a lot of size at the receiver position right now. And I think that's something maybe if they're looking for a practice squad guy could be interesting.
Yeah, he's listed as 6'3". You think that? And that one you believe is accurate?
Yeah,
195.
Yeah, a little skinnier than Hakeem Butler, but a big dude. Like you saw 21 out there, you were like, oh, okay, there you go.
Okay. That it in terms of the rookie stuff?
Yeah, I think that's all I got.
Okay. Real quickly, do want to bring up, we wanted to bring this up yesterday, but Bud Dupree, who was meeting with some other teams, apparently talked to the Steelers about a reunion there. I think it's interesting just because like for, a backup edge guy that really doesn't offer the special teams value. It's hard for me to see exactly where that fit lies just because I know that we've talked about this in the past and maybe we differ here, but I would just like to see the progression of Nick Herbig continue and him be put into an edge 3 spot. Obviously he does offer the special teams value that Bud wouldn't if he was brought in, but I'm not against the idea of having more edge depth. If you're talking about a backup edge guy that doesn't play a whole lot of special teams, can they make it work?
Yeah, I think it's like two different things almost. Like the guy that takes the 20% of snaps that Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt don't, I'm very happy with that mostly being Nick Herbig, especially because you can kind of tailor-made those scenarios to situations where you think he's going to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but if one of those guys gets hurt, Herbig being the 80% guy, I don't know. Like I think when who missed the game last year? Was it Highsmith missed the game or TJ missed the game? It was late in the year.
TJ missed the end of the season.
Yeah,
because of his injury. So yeah.
yeah. And we saw. I mean, like Marcus Golden played more than half of the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's more the way it would go if there was another major injury to one of those guys. And so I think they need somebody else that can be a real option. I'm not saying it has to be Bud Dupree or even someone necessarily at that level. But the only other guy that got is Jeremiah Moon, who was an undrafted free agent last year, played 100 snaps for the Ravens. Like, I want somebody better than that. Like, I think they need somebody. I think that's a place they can upgrade as they go through this summer period here and find some, or bring Marcus Golden back. I mean, I'd be fine with that too. He's a great guy.
Well, I was going to ask you between the
Everybody loved
two.
him.
Like between the two, if it was a reunion with Bud or bringing Marcus Golden back, which way would you lean between those two?
For the same dollar amount, I would pick Bud because he's a bigger guy, and I think that gives you like a little bit. Like Golden and Herbig are physically pretty similar, so I think it kind of gives you like two different kinds of guys. But I think Bud might want more money than Golden, so maybe I would prefer Golden based on the contract demand. For the same amount of money, I'd prefer Bud.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like, despite the sack production not being there early in his career, like Bud always knew how to set the run defense. Never really a problem with him. Yeah. And I feel like even last year, I mean, sack totals can be what they are, but and I'm not saying he was solely responsible for this, but like all of a sudden Atlanta's pass rush looked a lot better last year. And, there were some other factors in that. Had a pretty good defensive coordinator that ended up landing elsewhere with the regime change. And, they had Calais Campbell for a season. They had some other pieces that they brought in to finally do that. But 6.5 sacks for Bud last year, good amount of pressures. I think he can still play and at least be a rotational piece.
Yeah, I think Bud is going to want more of a role than the Steelers are going to have to offer and more of a salary that goes with it. I think somebody closer to Marcus Golden is probably more realistic.
Which, again, I'm also fine with that. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Interesting. I'm curious to see how this plays out. If it is one of those two guys we mentioned that they do bring in, I would say I feel comfortable saying I think that they're going to add somewhere to that position still.
For you, is that third? If you're ranking, like, what do they still need to do? Is that third for you after outside wide receiver and slot corner?
Yeah. I would say so.
Yeah, I think it is for me too. We haven't really talked about it a lot, but I think that's the place now where you kind of look at the depth and go, I think it could be better. Especially if the slot corner is someone like Peterson or Sutton that could also play outside. Because Corey Trice is the top backup at corner is a little questionable, right? 7th-round pick coming off injury, But if the slot corner is Sutton or Peterson or someone of that ilk that can also play some outside, I think that it's kind of possible to kill two birds with one stone there.
Yeah, I do think it is 3, but it's like because 1 and 2 just seem so much more pressing and glaring. It's like I wasn't even thinking about 3 until we started really having this conversation. Like we have conversations like this, and then I'm like, yeah, I could certainly use another body there.
Is there anywhere else? Like where is there anywhere else that you're looking at that you think?
I mean, I'm still worried about the defensive line, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I have faith in Cam Hayward being a better player than he was when he was on the field last year. Obviously the injury missed time, but then wasn't the same player because of the injury that he missed that time with. I mean, to me, the biggest X factor, well, I wouldn't say the biggest X factor because that to me would be the biggest X factor. But what is Larry Ogunjobi? I mean, you paid him decent amount of money on a 3-year deal after giving him a 1-year kind of prove it deal. And I don't know that he necessarily proved it in that 1 year to get a new 3-year contract, but he got one. And I don't know, to me, this is a make or break year for him. I don't think he sees year 3 of that contract unless he really shows something this year.
I agree. I just don't know what's going to be out there that represents an upgrade. They have a bunch of, very similarly to wide receiver, where they have a bunch of guys that are pretty okay. I don't think they have anybody that's great. But, they do have a bunch of options. And, the spare parts that are laying around in June generally do not get better than just pretty okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. So yeah, you're right. It's not like I'm sitting here thinking, oh, they can upgrade upon this right now, but I'm looking at it like this is something that I'm concerned about in season.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with that. And I think their depth in some other, like, tight end is weird too. Kind of similarly, like they don't really have a pure tight end too. Connor Hayward is, I guess Michael Pruitt is that guy. Connor Hayward's like, your kind of Swiss Army knife, and Darnell is your sledgehammer. But I guess Michael Pruitt is the guy there. But yeah, I think the holes.
I just thought of an interesting question actually with
Sure.
tight end.
Go ahead.
Just in terms of overall skill set, like what they bringing a little bit of everything. Is Rodney Williams actually tight end too?
I mean, I assume it's Pruitt because why else would he be there? But I really like Rodney Williams. I think he's a really good player.
I think Rodney could be a better receiving tight end than Pruitt, which is why I'm asking.
I agree. I think Pruitt's probably a better blocker. He's certainly bigger.
Rodney plays special teams. Very close to scoring a touchdown last year on a blocked punt.
So close. I think I did my 53-man roster projection. We didn't really talk about it a lot. But I have him getting cut, and there's some tough cuts on that list, man. Like I got Spencer Anderson getting cut. I got Trenton Thompson getting cut. Like that, those are pretty good players. This team is in pretty good shape. As about as good, if they can take care of those sort of three spots we talked about, like there are not a ton of things that are easily addressed. Are there some like big picture stuff like defensive line and obviously quarterback? But in terms of like what could have reasonably been done this offseason, they're getting pretty close to maxing out at this point.
Yeah, I agree. All right, good stuff. Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
Route 30. Westmoreland County. No, actually, I'm still in Alabama County, but I'm headed to Westmoreland County. _Saunders_PGH, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Tomorrow, you can find me back at Steelers Rookie Minicamp, and we'll do another little quick hitter with me and Nick from the South Side. And there may be something else happening tomorrow, but I'm not 100% on it, so I'm not gonna tease it.
Other than Paul Skeens debuting?
Other than that, check out Pittsburgh Baseball Now on YouTube. Doing video of Paul Skeens and or Livy Dunn. Just throwing that out there too.
There we go.
Who knows?
Hey, however we can get the viewership. If it takes Livy Dunn on the YouTube channel, make it Livy Dunn on the YouTube channel.
Okay, so in terms of like if there was a citywide wife and girlfriends championship, does Sierra and Livy Dunn get Pittsburgh close to Taylor Swift, or do we still have too far to go?
I mean,
like if Cole Tucker was still here, I think you could maybe make an argument.
Yeah, I mean, like globally, that's tough. Like touching Taylor on a global level is tough. Like
I think second place. Is anybody else?
Yeah. No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
it's funny. You know how my mind, again, always on wrestling, right? So like when I saw that Livy posted the thing with Paul, first thing that entered my mind is Cody Rhodes, the beginning of his theme. Instead of wrestling, though, Pittsburgh has more than one royal family now. Because we already had Russ and Sierra. Now we got Paul and Livy.
There you go.
But anyways, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here, hit us in the comments with any questions for when we come back after the weekend, thoughts about what we talked about on here. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find Steelers Afternoon Drive over there. You can find me at Zachary Smith PGH on all social media platforms. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.